welcome back to So Biased. I'm sorry it's been a long time since I've uploaded. Things have been crazy busy, including getting a new workspace. Ignore that. That's kind of a mess. It's organized, but it's like me organized. Y'all know, it's fine. It's like, don't move my mess because I know where everything is. So this week we're going to be making the Spencer jacket from Alexander Hamilton. My name is Alexander Hamilton. So the Costume Industry Coalition decided to get together during COVID in order to raise funds for their industry because obviously they were massively affected by COVID, and the costume industry is one of the few that is not actually unionized, and there are a lot of independent makers and artisans who do all sorts of amazing stuff. And they decided to make this pattern and release it to the general public so that we all could make beautiful costumes from Hamilton. And this Spencer does not appear in the stage show right now, but I'm told it is going to from now on. You do see a lot of these Spencer jackets. Eliza and Angelica wear one, a black one from Morning in It's Quiet Uptown, and then you see a couple of the ensemble members wearing them while they're flirting with Philip. If you haven't seen the musical, it is available on Disney Plus and highly recommended. It is very much a game changer as far as musical theater is concerned, in case you've been living in Iraq and haven't heard of Hamilton. It is won every award ever, including a Pulitzer. So the Hamilton Spencer pattern is based off of the costumes that they have there, and it's based off of a relatively accurate extant style in the Regency period. The Regency period is approximately 1811 to 1820. If you've ever seen Blackadder, and if you've never seen Blackadder, you need to go watch Blackadder. It was when King George was the King of England, but he was also insane. And so his son, who was the Prince Regent, took over, and hence there was a Regency. In Blackadder, you have the most amazing example of the Regency period because you have Hugh Laurie playing the idiotic, foppish Prince George. And if you only know Hugh Laurie from House, it will completely change your mind about Hugh Laurie. It's so funny. It is hands down my favorite series of Blackadder, and you also get to watch Stephen Fry beating the living snot out of Hugh Laurie, and it's hilarious, just fabulous. Tea! But I digress. So the Regency period is about a 10-year period. It's most of the Jane Austen novels take place there. You're really familiar with those super high-waisted, often called empire-waisted dresses, Bridgerton. Now, I normally don't do a lot of Regency dress. It's not as much the area that I prefer, but I love how cool and stylish this jacket is, and it is so nice for history bounding that I've actually been wearing it out everywhere, and I've gotten a ton of compliments on it. And no one thinks that, hey, that is 200 years out of date, because it's just heckin' cute. Yeah, if you want to pick up this pattern, I will leave a link in the description below. It is a fundraiser for the Costuming Industry Coalition, so if you want to help support the costumers who are out of work because of COVID and because Broadway and so much else is shut down, please go consider buying a pattern. They also released it in plus sizes. I use the regular size. I'm about a size 12, 14, so I fit into the regular size, but they do have a plus size, and Noelle from Costuming Drama made a version of the plus size, so I will leave a link to her video as well if you want to go see how that's made. But until then, let's get sewing. So these are the fabrics I'm going to be using. This is the liner. Isn't this super cute? It's this kind of satiny, really, really lightweight liner, but I'm like, I need it because, you need fun liners, right? So this is the main fabric. It looks burgundy. I swear I did not buy something burgundy.
Please, God, tell me I have not inspired something burgundy.
This is a Melton wool, and it is in this lovely kind of plum color. Melton is this really waterproof, weatherproof wool, which is really nice, and it's so soft. One side's a little denser, and the other side is a little softer. So this is the outside. The pattern calls for a woven, usually silk, but I ain't got that kind of money. It also calls to flatline it if it's a lighter weight. This is a coating wool, so it is obviously not lightweight, so I am not going to flatline it. So if you get the pattern and it says to flatline it, and you're using a lightweight fabric, please do. I have a feeling I might experience regrets when it gets to be time to do the cording and embroidery, because this is really heavy. So I printed off the pattern. We are going to tape it together. We're gonna lay it all out, and we're gonna get to cutting. And Nina doesn't care. Most of the details are done with what's called rouleau trim. So I need to cut this at a 45-degree angle, which is on the bias. Hence my name. And so I need to cut a whole bunch of diagonal 45-degree strips called bias strips to make a ton of rouleau trimming. Rouleau is, I did a little experiment with it here, is you take a little strip and you basically sew it in half, and then you sew it down onto the thing to make beautiful patterns. So that is actually step one. Normally this is done at the end, but for this jacket, it's all trims first. So let's make a ton of trim. I'm trying to cut some bias strips here. Can you use the rotary cutter, please? So one of the first decorations are these little kind of cherry berry things. So you cut out a whole bunch of squares, and then you sew a quarter-sized seam. Thankfully, Canadian quarters are the same size as American quarters. So you sew that in here, and then you put a little bit of cotton batting in the middle, and then pull it tight, and then trim the edging so you end up with a little kind of berry thing when you're done. So I need to do that many of these little berries. So, and they have to all be sewn by hand. Oh Lord. Okay, I found a way to do this by machine. I was able to do a really wide gathering stitch around the circle, and then put the stuffing in. I just used a piece of leftover cabbage, and then pull these gathering threads really tight. Only this many more to go. Oh Lord. Okay, that took forever. That's like, so there's 30 or some of these guys, and they'll be sewn on. It looks like holly to me. So it looks like you got holly leaves and holly berries. So these are all the little berries here. And then next up is the rouleau trim. Now, because I'm using this wool and it's very thick, I opted for 1 inch, and I think the pattern calls for 2 inch. And I'm going to sew all of these together. I probably have to do it by hand. And there's that much of it.
One eternity later.
This is about almost an entire day of work. I couldn't sew it by machine. I did have to sew it by hand. I pinned it all down. Most of it is sewn down by hand. You can see some of my stitches in there. It is a bit chunky. And this is the 1 inch stuff, so thank goodness I didn't do the 2 inch. It doesn't have quite as much detail as the thinner stuff, which is okay. I'm gonna tuck that under and pin that in, and I ended up having to sew the edges together and just kind of pull them tight, so we got a little tighter points than the big chunky rolls here. But still, I think it looks okay. This is number 1 of 3, so there's a slightly smaller leaf here and then an even smaller one here. So I'm just working on leaf number 2. But somebody needed to sleep on the fabric. Hi. Yeah? You didn't want to be by yourself? You need to be close? Aww. Ear rubs are the best. So one side of the rouleau trim is finally finished. Oh my god, this took hours. It is definitely, it is chunky. There's still some residual chalk bits here, but those will come off. So you have kind of big, medium, small. I'm not sure if I like the little berry things. They look a little too fat for here, so I may take those off. I am unsure. And now all I have to do is the whole other side. It's been like a week to do that. This is crazy. Okay, The rouleau is done. Actually, it's not even all done. This part of the rouleau is done. There's lots more to come. Next up, I marked the darts. I didn't mark them at the beginning because I had to handle this so much to sew everything else on that I would have wiped it all off. So I marked the darts on both sides, and now I'm gonna sew the darts. Okay, interfacing. This pattern has no pattern pieces that tell you where interfacing goes. So I am making a best guess at this point. So this is This is the center front, and it has this line which says interfacing line. Now, I am gonna make a guess here, I may be wrong, that the interfacing starts here and we interface from here up across and just do this whole chunk in interfacing, and then not the side here, and then interfacing on the collar. I do not know if this is correct because they are very unspecific and just interface as needed. Okay, that doesn't help. So I'm going to cut out 2 pieces of this. I'm going to attach it to the insides with some basting stitches because this isn't fusible. This is just sew-in interfacing, so that's fine. I'm just going to baste it onto the inside and then cut out a piece for the collar, just the same size minus the seam allowance, and then baste that in as well. Okay, this is the collar, and then I decided to put the sew-in interfacing, and I blame Bernadette Bender for this. I pad stitched the whole thing. So that's the collar. And then the center front pieces, this is where I decided to put the interfacing. That's that interfacing line here, and then I'm just going to baste this in with gigantic ugly stitches because there's a liner on the inside, so you're never going to see what I do here. So just big ugly stitches to hold it in place. That is it for the interfacing for this piece. So okay, now we actually start sewing pieces together. This is the center back. Fair warning, I've never sewn Regency clothing, so this is super new to me. But this is kind of normal with a back piece, is that you have these side pieces. So these are back side and then back center. And so the arms are set like super deep here, as opposed to, you know, having your standard kind of back that would go out to here and then the neck in the middle. So first step is to sew side back to center back, and then sew it at the shoulders to the front pieces. So that's what we're going to do next. Back is sewn. I did the side panels, and then it said to sew the sides together and the shoulders together. This is where the shoulder panels are. They go all the way up here. These are those front panels. So yeah, that's how deep set these things are. Also, if you are making this pattern, most of these seams are 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, which is like a lot, but not all of them. So keep that in mind, because if you look at the patterns, we'll be like, okay, here's 5/8, 5/8, and then you'll have one pattern that will be like, so you have something like, okay, 5/8, 5/8, 3/8. So it is not consistent across the whole pattern. So yeah, 3/8, 3/8, 5/8. So be warned that that's a thing, and it's kind of throwing me off here. So this is most of the jacket sewn together. So we have the front, we have the darts, back center, shoulders, back sides, and sides. Those are all sewn together. And then next is apparently the belt. Speaking of endless amounts of trim, I am almost done. The endless amounts of trim. So the collar, actually all of these edges call for a double cord edging, and I made some, but it's kind of chunky just because, again, the big fabric. So I also made some of this single cord, and I think this looks a lot nicer. So I made a whole bunch of this. I sewed it down to the lapels. I'm gonna just hand sew in the very tops and marry these up together, because it is really thick when you're trying to get 2, 4, 6 layers of fabric when it's this thick together. So I'm gonna finish that off. But the collar is attached, and then we have the belt just gets sewn onto the bottom. All the seams have been pressed. And then the last bit of trim has been sewn onto the bottom all the way around. And then at the corners here, I just did the, sewed them at a 45-degree angle across so that we have a nice angled design here. There will still be liner on the inside, and there will be, you know, things sewn to, the liners will be sewn to here, so it's not going to look quite as ugly. And that, I think, is it for the cording. And next up is going to be starting up the lining. So I need to sew some darts and all that stuff into the lining and start attaching it, I think, oops, extra thread, to the inside of the jacket. Right now it is currently a Spencer vest. There are no sleeves in yet, but sleeves will also be coming soon, and interfacing is stitched in with big, ugly running stitches. So let's have a talk about this pattern. This was obviously written by some like super professionals, and there is something in the teaching community referred to as assumptive teaching, is when you teach something and you assume a certain degree of skill on the level of the person you're teaching. And that is definitely the case here, because in the instructions, it has step-by-step how to put together the main fabric. And then you get to the lining and it says, sew all the seams in the lining. That's it. I sewed together the lining, I'm pretty sure the right way. It's very similar to the outside. So we have this center back piece. That's just a fold. It's not actually a seam, but I will press that out. So the funny shaped center back piece, and then the side pieces, the center side, and then the front has a front piece. Oh, it says sew darts and seams in lining. That was the whole instruction. So I sewed the darts, and then it has this facing piece, which, sorry, the corners are kind of really tight. This facing piece here, which gets sewn in, and then they ask you to bag line it, which I've mostly done. The corners are super thick, you can see here, so I couldn't get it through my sewing machine without literally breaking a needle inside the fabric. Don't do that. So I'm just going to hand stitch the corners together. And the sleeves, I am really unsure about what they want. So what I'm gonna do, I haven't sewn the sleeves in or the sleeve linings. So I'm gonna sew the sleeves in separately, and then I'm going to hand sew the lining into the lining. And the facing was able to cover up some of my sins. I need to still finish the hand sewing there, but it made the corners of the lapels a whole lot cleaner, which I'm super happy with. Next up is the arms and the decoration on that. I have completely given up on the rouleau trim, but I did manage to find this beautiful velvet ribbon. And if you can see, it's like the perfect match for the fashion fabric. So for the arm trim, I'm going to use this because it has this interlocking kind of woven pattern, and this is much thinner, and I can likely get it done with this. And I'm probably going to use this for the petals on the sleeve puffs as well. Okay, this is the sleeve top, and there is the little tracing pattern template-y thing, and I traced it all onto the sleeve with, should have been a lighter colored chalk, but I couldn't find my white chalk. So what you do is you start at the bottom little notch, and then you do this kind of ladder weave, skipping every other notch all the way up to the top, and then you go back the other way, catching all the ones that you didn't get on the way up. And you do that on both sides. So it's like up, down, down. And I'm going to pin all this down, and then I am going to hand sew just inside here, inside the fold, so that you don't actually see the stitches. Okay, the lattice work on the sleeves is done, but I have unfortunately run into a problem. This is attempt number 2. This is attempt number 1. I definitely got better. So that means I'm gonna have to take this one out and do it again, because look at how nice this is and how freaking wonky. Oh, stop getting better at things. All right, next up are the sleeves. So there is a top sleeve and a back sleeve, and they're asymmetrical. You can probably see it here. So make sure you sew the right one to the right one. Otherwise they won't match up. You also have to do they call it a shearing stitch, but it's basically just a gathering stitch at the top of the sleeve. And then you also have the sleeve lining, same thing, top and bottom sewn together. And then they ask you to bag line it, which I have done. Okay, so lining goes wrong side to wrong side, and then at the cuff they ask you to do a slip stitch to get the cuff and the lining together. They do ask you to do that double piping on the edge, which I don't have any more of. I wasn't a big fan of, so I just turned it under and then did the slip stitch for the lining. Also, these sleeves are heckin' long. Like, holy crap, are they long. And you know me, I'm 5'11", I am tall, I got long limbs, I'm like built like a giraffe. So if I say it's long, it is heckin' long. The other thing to note is, because these are asymmetrical, make sure to line up the right lining to the right sleeve, or you might end up unpicking, which I didn't do 3 times. So next up is gathering up the top of the hem. They want you to sew this in kind of like 2 parts. So you sew like the bottom edge and then you gather and then you sew the top edge, which is weird. I'm just gonna kind of gather and pin and then just sew the whole thing. So I'm gonna sew the fashion fabric together, and then I am going to turn under the lining, and then I'm just gonna slip stitch that onto the inside lining. And oh god, I've still not even done the petals. If you are a novice sewer working on this, may the old gods and the new be with you, because damn, this is complex.
There are moments when the words don't reach. There is suffering too powerful to name. You hold your child as tight as you can and push away the unimaginable.
So that's it for the Hamilton Spencer. As you can see, it is so cute. Seriously, I wear this everywhere. The only problem is there's no pockets, and there is nowhere to put pockets on it because it fits so high and so close. But otherwise, it is adorable. It's also really warm. I mean, wool. I do have a few qualms with the pattern. I did ride the struggle bus a lot of the time. There are no pictures at all in how to do the construction other than in the detail. So there's pictures of the leaves on front and there's pictures of the sleeve detail, but there are no pictures of construction. So if you're used to that, nothing. But the end result is a really, really pretty garment. I'm a huge fan of it. It is a great cause. It is awesome to support artisans because these people are phenomenal. They make the most beautiful clothing you could possibly imagine. So please support them and support other artisans who are out of work if you have the means to, because, you know, it's COVID. We're all struggling. But in the meantime, I have a whole bunch more projects coming up. I'm hoping to come back to weekly uploading, but if not, I'm hoping to do at least every 2 weeks. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Please share it with people you know. It's been such a fun project for me to make, and boy, have I leveled up some of my sewing skills, including making rouleau. Like, I have some more 1940s projects coming along, as well as a bunch of research projects in the works. I'm hoping to be able to do some more extant garments and some more World War II projects, which is something I'm really excited about. So stay tuned for announcements about that. So I'm curious what you guys thought of the project. How did you like it? Have you tried this yourself? Please leave me a comment if you're working on this or you have dealt with similar Regency styles. It's been a really neat journey for me. Please comment, let me know what you're working on, or if you have any suggestions or ideas for new videos in the future, I would love to hear them. But until then, stay happy and healthy, take care of each other, and we'll see you soon. Bye! Film an intro because I have to wear a bra. I don't even know what I'm going to say. Why don't I plan this? I'm not a planner. I'm a doer. Are you dropping toys? I'm kind of doing stuff. You can get it. Thank you. Okay, here, get your. You want the toy? Or you want to throw it? Okay. Following the square on the viewfinder. My face is heckin' shiny.